Choosing a laptop can be a very stressful decision. Deciding a budget, how much power you really need, which operating system, new or used, it can make your head explode. When my family has asked me in the past which laptop to buy for their child for school, I've always said to avoid the cheap laptops because anything under $500 is basically e-waste, and just pay the extra money for something good. But that was until I checked out this machine. This is the AX15 from Acemagic, which is a laptop that sells for only $300 brand new. And even just looking at it, you can tell this is nothing like the cheap laptops you'd see at Walmart from just a few years ago. With a metal chassis and a large trackpad, it's obvious where their inspiration came from. But is this cheap laptop all bark and no bite? Let's find out right after this quick word from this video sponsor.
When you install Windows on your Steam Deck or any other PC for that matter, you're going to need to activate it to unlock all the settings. Why spend a ton of money for a code when you can use the sponsor of today's video, SCDKey? You can purchase Windows keys at a large discount, and to get 25% off your order, use code JASON, that's JASON, to get 25% off your order. After purchasing, you'll get your code pretty much instantly and be able to unlock your computer's full potential. And remember that all Windows 10 Pro users can upgrade to Windows 11 for free at any time in the future using these keys. Just take your code, go to your Windows activation menu, pop it in, and boom. Windows is activated, and you should be on your way. Thanks to SCDKey.
As stated before, this laptop hovers around the $300 to $310 price point on Amazon, depending on whatever nonsense sale they pretend they're having. And just a few years ago, that price point would have given me major red flags. At that time and price, it was obvious that you were going to get a laptop with a cheap plastic chassis, eMMC storage, or even worse, a spinning hard drive, and a laptop that would feel outdated starting on the drive home. But a lot has changed since then, and it's kind of blowing my mind. Full disclosure. Acemagic did not sponsor this video, but they did send over their laptop as a review unit. But as always, they agreed to my rule, if it sucks, it sucks. Meaning that every opinion I have is my own, and they don't get to see this video until it's posted, and they have no say in it whatsoever. So with that out of the way, let's go over the specs. The AX15 is a 15.6-inch laptop that is running a 12th gen Alder Lake N95 CPU, which is a 4-core, 4-thread CPU that can boost up to 3.4 GHz. It comes equipped with 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, a 512 gig SSD, dual band Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 5.0. The screen is an IPS panel that displays a resolution of 1920 by 1080p and has a maximum refresh rate of 60 Hz. The chassis is made entirely of aluminum, and the I/O is surprisingly substantial. On the right side we have an SD card reader, USB 2.0, USB 3.2, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. And on the opposite side we have a Type-C port for data, a full-size HDMI 2.0, another USB 3.2, and a Type-C port for fast charging only. I do wish we had an Ethernet port and at least one USB-C that could handle 10 gigabits per second speed, but I guess that's wishful thinking. The charging port is unable to transmit data, so it's only used for charging, which is another bummer. The laptop is relatively thin and light, coming in at only 1660 grams, and it fits nicely into smaller bags. There's no fingerprint scanner, and while there is a webcam, it does not have Windows Hello. So I hope you don't mind putting your password or PIN to unlock the laptop every time. Just off the bat, on paper, this thing looks pretty great. The aluminum chassis makes it feel premium and sturdy. I love that it charges via USB-C and not some barrel plug, and has all the ports you'd want on a laptop, including a headphone jack. It fails the stupid one-finger open test, but I'm still not sure what this test is trying to prove, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. Opening it up, we can see it has a full QWERTY keyboard, and they've even built in a numpad, with the home buttons being put as secondary functions on top. Love to see that on here, as they know this thing will probably be used for either schoolwork or an office job, and the keyboard feels relatively nice to type on. It's nothing to write home about, but it gets the job done. Unfortunately, the keyboard is not backlit at all, so working in the dark might be difficult if you require vision of your keyboard while typing. The trackpad is large, which is fantastic to see, but one thing I dislike about it is how hollow and tinny it sounds and feels to click it. Comparing to other laptops, even in this price range, it's something they could definitely improve on. It also has tap to click anywhere on the trackpad, so you can avoid the loud clicking sound, and it supports using 2-finger tap to right click. Like most laptops, it also supports 2-finger scrolling, and it feels pretty good as long as you're not physically clicking it. The laptop comes with a licensed copy of Windows 11 Home and contains virtually no bloatware. Many laptop manufacturers sell out to these bloatware companies to help keep the price of their laptops competitive, but this Acemagic laptop is just a bog standard copy of Windows. No bloat, no anything. The built-in speakers are not great, but passable. They are a bit tinny sounding and don't give a rich and full listening experience. But you'll never have any issues understanding what people are saying in podcasts or movies. I'm not a big audio guy, so I'll just say they are passable, but nothing amazing. It's hard to give an idea of what they sound like through camera, but I'll try. The screen is a surprisingly attractive IPS panel that displays at 1080p. The viewing angles are quite good, and you don't really see any dark or bright spots on it. I do wish it got a little brighter, because if you're on campus and trying to study outside between classes, it might be a little hard to see the screen on a particularly sunny day. But if you're primarily going to use this inside, then no real complaints here. Let's talk about the processor. It's a very low-powered CPU, which has its pros and cons. The pros would be that it doesn't get too hot, so it keeps the laptop nice and cool, and it doesn't take up as much energy even at idle, which helps the battery last a little longer. The cons are that it might struggle when doing too many things at once, like having 10 plus Chrome tabs open, light gaming, or any other CPU-heavy tasks. I could show you some arbitrary numbers from a CPU benchmark, but if you're in the market for a laptop like this, I doubt the number means anything to you, and I doubt you care. So I'll just spell it out for you. While I believe the CPU is enough for general use, which means web browsing, school or office work, email, YouTube, and that kind of stuff, anything that requires even a little horsepower might see a slowdown if doing too much stuff at once. It does not even have hyperthreading and can get bogged down severely when using Windows 11 normally. So if you're into using Linux, I think putting that on there would help the performance out a lot. One thing to note about this is that while the CPU power is okay for today's use, if you're going to buy a laptop, you probably want it to be good enough for today and at least a few years down the line. So you might need to reconsider if your laptop's requirements will be similar in a few years and if this will be enough power to hold you over. Let me be clear. This is not a gaming laptop. It's not advertised as that in the slightest, so don't hold your breath, especially with this wimpy CPU. But there are a few games you can actually play on it. I tried Ghost Runner 2, and it was a slideshow, so unplayable. But really light games like League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, Enter the Gungeon, or even Fortnite were actually playable, with some reservations. Don't expect top-level performance, but hey, it can do it. I'd say this is a play around of an indie game or esports game in between classes level of performance, which is more than I expected at this price point. The battery also was more than I expected. I let a 1080p video run at full brightness and unplugged the charger, which should be a good medium ground for CPU use, and I was able to get 4.5 hours until the battery finally died. And I'm sure if you put the machine in battery saving mode or reduce the brightness, you could probably get to 5.5 hours if you're lucky. But that still isn't a full 8-hour workday. And while it obviously doesn't compare to a modern MacBook, I'd say it's pretty good compared to other Windows laptops and surpasses laptops in this price range for sure. But in the off chance you do need to charge it, you don't need to carry around a huge bulky charger. It's simply a USB-C cable that will fit comfortably in your bag or even plug directly into a power bank. The webcam is only 720p, which is a huge bummer considering it's 2024, but it's still usable in a pinch. The audio you're hearing is from the onboard microphone, so if you're using the webcam for a Zoom call, this is realistically what you're going to be looking like and sounding like. Outside of the resolution, the white balance is all over the place and makes it look very grainy and blown out in certain spots, but the onboard sound is good enough to hear me semi-clearly, but will probably pick up everything else in your area, like a lawnmower outside or even a toilet flushing. So be cautious if you're using this on a work call, but for family and friends, it should be fine. Now, in terms of upgradability, I'd say there's room for improvement, but it receives a passing grade. Even mid-level to top-tier Windows laptops these days often have components soldered to the board, disallowing any kind of upgrades down the line, which is a real shame that the industry is going in that direction. Let's take off the hood and see what we're working with. As you can see, we have a single stick of RAM, meaning we could never go dual channel with this device. The laptop does support up to 32 gigs of RAM if you wanted to upgrade, but that means you'd have to remove this stick and then buy a single stick of 32 gigs RAM. Over here we also have the M.2 SSD, which can be removed and upgraded as well. But this is strictly a SATA drive and not NVMe. So your maximum read-write will be just like any other SATA drive and not get the blazing fast NVMe speeds we've had for so long. The RAM and SSDs provided are from no-name companies and not a familiar or reputable company, so I can't comment on their reliability at this time. The Wi-Fi speeds are what you'd expect with this Wi-Fi 5 chip. On the left is from this laptop while just a few feet away from the router, and the one on the right is from an M1 MacBook using a Wi-Fi 6 chip. It's obvious to see that while the Acemagic obviously can't reach as high speeds as the MacBook, 300 meg is still more than a lot of people have at home these days, and way more than they'd ever get at most schools or workplaces. So should you buy a $300 laptop? This laptop is most importantly affordable, and can be shipped to your home for free very quickly. It has a premium feeling chassis with impressive I/O, but while the trackpad is large, it lacks the premium feeling shared by the case. The CPU is underpowered for any CPU heavy tasks, but it's passable for day-to-day use. The webcam and mic are acceptable for the price range, and the machine can be upgraded with some reservations. But what would the alternative to buying a cheap laptop like this be? You could go to the used market, Used laptops that were recycled from big organizations are readily available on eBay. Devices like ThinkPads or Dell Latitudes are always in huge supply, especially once they hit the 4 to 5 year old life range. You'll certainly have more CPU power in those probably, but they are old and don't usually have the same premium chassis that the Acemagic has. But not everyone wants to tinker with their laptop or buy a used one and risk it breaking soon after. They just want a laptop that will be here now, will work for what they need, and be reasonably affordable. So if you're in that group of people, then yes, this laptop is surprisingly good for the price. But if you're a tinkerer and want a little more CPU power, then you can get a stronger used laptop on eBay. If you're not a tinkerer and you have a little bit more budget than $300, then I think a refurbished M1 MacBook Air will suit you way better. I know it's literally double the cost of the Acemagic and it's not Windows, but it's better in almost every category that matters. 20-hour battery life, beautiful retina screen, amazing speakers, and an extremely powerful CPU that can handle way more than the Acemagic or any used laptops on eBay in this price range. No matter what you pick though, just be sure it fits your use case and your budget. I'll drop links in the description to the Acemagic laptop, as well as the MacBook, and even some cheap used laptops on eBay that I think are pretty great for the price. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more technology content. My name's Jason. Thanks for watching.